All right, Thom McElroy, we're here. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to sit down with us and dive into finding direction.
Yeah, I'm very honored to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. And so we're sitting right now at your house in Newport Beach. It's an absolutely beautiful place.
Thank you.
Real quick, I was just curious, your passion and the way I want to go about this conversation is, if you're cool with it, just dive basically right into the guts of it.
Perfect.
So one thing that I've seen with what you've done is you talk a lot, and it seems like people that you're close with, something that's a common theme in your life is people have been like, oh, you're so lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, as I've done some research on you and looked, you've come up with this thing which you call luck by design.
Mm-hmm.
And you say it's with passion, trust, risk, and then surrounding yourself with good people.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I'm curious, and it seems like throughout your life, you found what your passion was and you ran into some speed bumps that we'll talk about later, how you got through those.
Mm-hmm.
But for people that are listening to this that maybe don't know that first step to designing their luck, which is passion, how would you suggest that they go about finding their passion, maybe uncovering it or getting clear of what it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, like, whatever you are completely like, what's your first thought every day? What drives you every day? That's pretty much a passion. For me, it was growing up. It was surfing. It was a complete release. It was good for my body and my mind. It was a great way of getting out of the house for long hours. And I think there was something that was so healthy about it, and all the people involved. And as I got older with sponsors, I learned so much through them, business-wise, how to be professional, how to have integrity, show up on time, because if you miss a heat by 1 minute, you're done. The contest is over. But I think passion was my number one thing, and then right behind that was art. Even though that I took a direction of becoming, or going after a business degree, halfway through I decided to change, and I was poked by a professor at Orange Coast College who said, hey, why are you a business major? And I said, well, my dad wants me to. And he said, well, are you going to live your dad's life? And at that point, it was the first time I was really questioned by authority, which is a professor. And I knew right then and there that I needed to change my life, and I needed to pursue art. And that was right when I was 18, and I was kind of at a crossroads going, okay, do I go and pursue surfing and go on the circuit and get super serious and become pro, or do I go to school and pursue what I really want to do? And obviously I pursued school, which was the best thing, because it filled my heart, my soul, much more than surfing could have. Back then, surfing wasn't a completely established sports. Tom Curran, who was the top, was maybe making $40,000 a year with a couple sponsors here and there, maybe 100. Even though money wasn't important, I felt that if I want to have success, I need to go to school and learn and get out of the house, and that's a continuous thing, getting out of the house. I've always been the kid that woke up at 5:30 in the morning and did not come home till 8, 9 at night, because I was just living life. From surfing, skating, fishing all around Orange County, which was a blast. When it comes down to passion, I think the best thing to do is everyone has to dig deep into their soul and figure out what really drives them, and they have to imagine and visualize where they want to be and doing what they want to be. And for me, it was definitely being in the surf world, which evolved into action sports world.
Now, when you, let's say, for example, decided to go to school rather than to pursue surfing, was that before or after you were at community college?
That was midway through community college.
Okay, so at that point, you were still pursuing business.
I was still pursuing business, yeah.
And-
And I had pressure from my sponsors saying, hey, you know what? We really, want you to go on tour. We'll pay for everything. And, it was alluring. It sounded great. Travel the world.
Yeah, so
I was already like, I've been to other continents surfing, South Africa to, Hawaii, and I was going there every year. It was great. But I felt that school would be a deeper direction for
long
me.
term.
Yeah, long term. And I'd just become a better person, because growing up, I was in such a hypercentric little bubble.
Right.
At surf contests every weekend, I was with the same people. And then during the week, I had my small group of friends,
Right.
which was very small because I didn't have time because I was training plus playing sports in high school. And so I knew that I needed to bust out of my bubble, leave the house, go to school.
Yeah.
And obviously go to school where I can still surf every day
Of course.
and be close to Mexico. I went to San Diego State, close to Mexico, which I loved. I've been going to Mexico since I was 14, so it was like,
right next to it.
yeah,
Perfect.
it was my country. But it was very important for me to step out of my bubble and pursue school and move away from the
Right.
house.
Okay, so then fast forward as you went to San Diego State, you're initially a business major, right, when you got there? And then about how long into being at San Diego State was it that you had that decide to switch to another major?
First semester.
First semester, okay. And so now you basically run into this problem or dilemma, where you find art is what you want to do, but your dad, LAPD, is maybe not the easiest person to face, which I think a lot of people can relate to that, that are trying to figure out what they want to do. They have an idea, but then they have maybe parents that have a different idea. And so I think you have a super interesting perspective that a lot of other people would benefit from, where they're maybe going through something similar. And so I'm curious, like, what advice would you have for someone out there that maybe has an idea of what they want to do, but whether it's external pressures like social media or school or a counselor or maybe even their parents, something else is telling them that they should not follow their heart, I guess you would say. Like, what advice would you give to those people on like how you got through it, maybe how they could get through something similar to ultimately live a life that they love?
Yeah. Well, I think as you grow up and mature, there's always the reckoning day, the reckoning month, or the reckoning year, where if you really ball up and just look at yourself and just go, you know what, I need to do what is going to make me happy. I need to pursue that. And it was like, for me, it was like a 2x4 hitting me in the back of the legs. It was just like, whoa, I need to like do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And, telling my dad, and my dad was just like, you're gonna be penniless, living in the streets. Artists are who they are. They're flakes, and I'm not gonna support you. And then once I started breaking down my life to my dad, like, okay, when was the last time you actually gave me money outside of paying my tuition? He goes, never. And I go, okay, I've been working since I was 15, completely on my own. Okay, so how am I doing in school? Well, you're better than, 3.4, which was big for me. And I'm like, well, I did okay on SATs. I'm not in trouble. Have I been arrested? I've got, maybe one driving violation, but come on. I mean, I'm my own man.
Super well.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't have to worry about me. And and then he finally came around, and my mom was a huge supporter. So, so he got behind me 100%. He didn't understand it because he was from a completely different world, where my mom was more creative and open to new ideas and what have you. So she kind of broke him down, and they compromised. And you know, today he looks at it and just like, oh my God, it was dumb. I should have supported, and now he's the biggest cheerleader. So, so I think my biggest advice to young men and women is that they need to dig deep and go, okay, what really makes me happy? And they have to just take the risk and pursue it. And if you don't pursue it, you're always going to have this thought, this weird grind in your brain telling, you know, asking you, why haven't I done it? And why and when should I do it? And if you're going to be real with yourself, you need to have that discussion, that inner discussion. And you know, it's risky, it's scary. You just got to believe in yourself, do your research, or just go balls deep in and just go for it. You know, it's like, you know, you can sit and write a business plan, but the day you open your doors or whatever, that thing can be completely obsolete. So I think, you know, there's something about just jumping in and charging and taking that risk and believing in yourself and chase your passion. And so many opportunities will open up if you're willing to open up to the world and listen to it and just dive in.
And when you decided to do an art major, I think there's a stigma, right? That people are like, oh, it's probably the stigma your dad had, right? Where it's like, you're an art major, how is this ever going to turn into a career? Like, did you have any sort of idea that, all right, I'm going to convince him that it's cool for me to be an art major, and then this is the plan I'm going to take? Or was it just like, I know I love this and I'm passionate about this, and because I'm passionate about this, I'll figure it out?
It was the latter. I knew whatever, and it stemmed through when I was a kid. Like, whatever sport I played, I always best position or MVP or captain or whatever. I worked my ass off, and I tried to perfect the skill that I needed, and I always had that confidence. Even though you get knocked down and you lose and what have you, and you blow games and it's all on your shoulders and everyone hates you and whatever. I've been there, but then I've been on the top where you win championships and it's because of you. So I don't know, I just kind of had this vein of confidence that whatever I do, I'm going to pull off. You know, I graduate. My first job was I thought I was going to work at an ad agency, so my mom bought me 3 suits, and I was going to get out there and interview and what have you. And 3 days after, that weekend after I walked the graduation ceremony, I was out surfing and I saw a guy on the water, and he's like, "Hey, did you graduate yet? Have you graduated yet?" And I said, "Hey, just last week, I'm done." And he's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I go, "Well, you know, I'm going to go work at an ad agency." And I hear myself and I'm like, I probably should have had those interviews like 6 months prior, but I just like, you know, I'm going to wing it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it. And so he goes, "Hey, you know, I work at Vision Skateboards. Would you want to be a graphic artist?" And I'm thinking, no, you know, I'm going to go work at ad agency. I want to wear a suit and I want to be cool and whatever. And I'm thinking, you know what? Okay, I'll show up on Monday. And I showed on Monday, and I was doing exactly what I was taught to do in school. I was a very technical drawer. I'm not a good illustrator, but I can technically draw logos and graphics, and
Yeah.
And he put me on a board, and you know, I just loved it. It was amazing. And so after the first day, I'm like, so yeah, I'm in. And he's like, okay. So show up tomorrow. And I go, well, by the way, what does it pay? He goes, $6.50 an hour. And I'm like, I'm on the calculator. I'm like, there's no way. You know, and I had friends making like 30, 40 grand, and I'm like, $6.50 an hour. I'm like, number one, I can't tell my parents because I'm penniless living in the streets. Number two, I couldn't tell my girlfriend at the time. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. So I'm like, God, I really got to think this. But I looked at it and I go, I was so passionate about what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was meeting incredible skaters that day, like guys that I would see skating pools in the skate park, and it just like the environment was just awesome. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And then to supplement my income, I started freelancing at night. So I went to all my sponsors, like Bob Hurley, who was running Billabong at the time. I went to O'Neill. I went to all the surf brands and just said, hey, what can I do for you? And they're like, oh, t-shirt designs. And I'm like, what? T-shirt design? But I was a printmaking minor, so I knew the whole silk screen process and whatever. And so I started designing t-shirts in the back of a warehouse. Well, actually, at that time, I had a loft in my apartment. And so I was working 8 hours at Vision and probably 5-6 hours a night freelancing to supplement my $6.50. And after a while, my pay went up at Vision because I was leapfrogging everyone there because they were all ex-pro skaters and non-educated.
Right.
And so I got better jobs, and then creative director, and I had getting paid well. But my freelance business was so big that I decided to go out on my own, and that's kind of how I started. I had a very short partnership with a friend of mine who were doing private labels for Macy's and Nordstrom's. We're doing their surf line, and I was working day and night with that. We had printing presses. It was humming, and we brought in a new partner who was an accountant, smart guy with a lot of money. And about 3 months after that, I'm watching TV on a Saturday, and I get a knock at the door, and there's a guy who serves me papers, and I'm like, whoa, what's this all about?
Yeah.
And I'm 25.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, what's this? Being served papers. All I think about is my dad, something's wrong. And it was one sentence, special board meeting. The topic is the termination of Thom McElroy from Mormac. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So next day, Sunday, us three sat down, and they're like, you're fired. You're gone. We're going to buy you out, and you're gone. I'm like, what the heck?
And this was the company you started?
Yeah, with my friend. Gary Morgan and Thom McElroy, Mormac. And I'm just like, what? And they're like, yeah, we feel that we don't need you, and we're paying you too much money, which I wasn't getting paid anything. And basically they thought that they could do it on their own. And even though I was in control of all the artwork and everything.
You're producing all the content.
And I brought all my clients that I freelanced with to the company.
Yeah.
All my skate buddies and surf buddies, everybody, they were all my clients. And I'm like, oh God, and it was such a rough time. So the day I actually started McElroy Designs, my son was born, so I had no job, brand new baby, and I had a mortgage on a condo. And I probably had a car payment at 25. Talk about
heavy load.
Heavy load. Talk about shit hitting the fan.
Yeah.
It hit.
Yeah. And
so I went in a complete panic. How am I going to, survive? but I started McElroy Designs, and in the back of a warehouse, a neighbor had a printing facility, and I started in his closet in the back of the warehouse. And when clients would come in, I'd meet in his a conference room, and they're like, "Whoa, you're doing pretty good." I'm like, I'd walk them through. He had a magazine too, and I'd walk them through, and they're like, "Yeah, wow, you're like working with all these people." Little did they know my office was in the warehouse in a closet.
Right.
So that was short-lived. That was about 6 months. The day I started McElroy Designs, I was always in the black. Every month I made enough money.
Yeah.
I worked my ass off day and night. And I was so passionate about it. Plus I was working with all the best people. Like I'd walk into Bob Hurley's office, who was running Billabong, and he would tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I'd walk into Quicksilver, Bob McKnight would tell me what to do.
Right.
I mean, I was like with the best of the best,
Okay.
and I was learning so much. And so yeah, I grew my business extremely quickly at that time, and that was in 1989, and by 1990, Quicksilver was my biggest client, and I had 4 people working for me, and I mean we were cranking. There was nobody like me in the action sports that can handle like everything from t-shirt design to ad design.
Right.
I was doing outdoor. I was doing displays for in stores. I was doing window fronts. I mean, it was just everything. And I surrounded myself with really good people, better artists than me. But I always held back on having like better managers than me because of my ego. And one day a guy called me out on it, and that was the best day of my life, because finally I'm like, I need to relinquish. I don't need to touch everything. I need to believe in people, and that kind of changed things.
So to kind of piggyback off that, I know from obviously what you just said, and from also hearing you talk other times, that you have a pretty ridiculous work ethic. And so I was curious what you feel the part of working hard and having a ridiculous work ethic plays in finding your direction. Like obviously you did a lot of different things, so you were able to sort of taste and try and figure out what worked, what you liked, what you didn't like. I was curious, kind of 2 parts. One, what do you feel like work ethic plays in helping you find your direction? And then how would you recommend to work not only hard, but also work smart while you're working hard?
Great questions. I think through working hard, even though I was hands-on doing everything from the back end of the business, the finances, because I had that background in business with the business degree, and then all of a sudden being able to do the creative and then going out and selling it. And through having all 3 of those things, and I did a lot of research. At that point, I'd read up on small design firms, big firms, ad agencies. So I had all these newsletters coming in, and I was always like writing notes about the best things that I liked about all these companies.
Right. So you were always in the ecosystem.
Oh yeah.
You knew
I was a student of the marketplace because I didn't know anything. At that point, I thought I knew some stuff, but once you start reading about successful people and kind of what they've done, and you're like, wow. And there was this one newsletter, and I forget what it was called, but it was literally like a zine that this guy would put out, and I subscribed to it. But he was so good. He was a guy who had built a design firm, himself, all the way up to a huge design firm. And he would spell out what you need to do, and I would literally go step by step to follow what he did, and it helped me out tremendously. And so, and being open to possibilities.
Right.
Anything that was like happening, I didn't know about that there was a process,
Right.
But I was always open as a kid too, just like what's going on, you know, I was just, and I loved being around good people, and I loved being out in the public and going to surf shops and snowboard shops and talking with like the littlest kid on the cell phone. Hey, what's going on? What's hot? What you know, why are you wearing that? What's going on? What are you into? And I'd like learn all this stuff, and that would help me out later because of different programs I did. But yeah, what was the second part?
The work smart and hard. But it seems like what you're saying is just like the smart part is you could have worked super hard on building your agency, but if you weren't aware of everything that was going on in the marketplace, now you could be working hard just in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and how I became much smarter was that I surrounded myself with way better people. I was able to delegate, and when I felt that I had the best people, I went into full laissez-faire mode where I let them make decisions, I let them have direction, I let them have a lot of leeway, and I would come in and you know, overlook, and if I saw something wrong, I would step in and what have you, but I really gave freedom to everyone that worked for me to like really grow as a person.
Right.
And I think that was the healthiness of the company and the environment, because everyone got to be themselves. And I didn't stifle it. You know, I would stifle it if you were not showing up on time and doing things that you shouldn't have been doing. That weren't, you know, that didn't have integrity or morals or whatever. But outside of that, I mean, and I was able to step back and become more of a visionary and really pinpoint who I wanted to work with, and it was great too, because you know, when Volcom started, I was able to give a lot of effort into that as well, through, you know, marketing and running everything through my company, and so it just all kind of came together in a weird way. I invested in technology. I always had, you know, I was the first one within my peers to have a computer. And I became like I was on the forefront of always having the best design programs. You know, I had a direct link with Adobe. I had direct link with Apple. I had, you know, IT guys just guiding me. I always had the best computers, because in the very beginning with Apple, you do these big programs, and if you didn't command save once when you should have, the whole thing could have disappeared. And that happened where I learned how to save everything on DAT tapes. Back then, you didn't save them on CDs, you saved them on these little cassette that were DAT tapes. So I had libraries of DAT tapes of everything, and it was such a pain in the ass to go back through and look for stuff. But yeah, when you're working smart and you're super passionate and you love what you do, I mean, there's so many possibilities and opportunities to open up. And I was always out looking for new clients and grinding away and just, you know, I had a filter. I had a filter of people I wanted to work with, and even though if they sound like a great client, but if they weren't good people, I didn't work with them. I just said, you know, I drew a line. It's just not worth it.
Was there anything specific you did to build your network? Because I know you made a lot of connections through surf competitions, things like that. But were there any other ways that you continued to like build your network and the great people that you did?
Yeah, I would go to all the important trade shows. For me, I was in the very beginning. In the beginning, I was driven more by apparel. So I'd go to the Magic Show in Vegas, where it was like from Yves Saint Laurent to some guy from New York making ties, you know. And I would go talk to everybody. I try to talk to everybody, and I met so many amazing people, and through that and spending the time of just discussing, you know, opportunities and possibilities of a small guy like myself working with bigger companies, you know, it was cool. And then when we got into video games, I'd go to the E3s and the electronic video game shows and go door to door and just start meeting people. And eventually, you know, I picked up a French client, Titus, and did some great work with them. And then from there, the word got out that we were experts in youth marketing. And next thing I know, I'm working for Activision and, you know, working on the Tony Hawk franchise. And then from that, worked on several of their games. And then Microsoft figured out who was doing all that, and then they brought us in to launch Xbox, and that was the pinnacle. Like, okay,
we've made it.
We've made it. We're in the big leagues. We're on Microsoft's campus, and they're working on a super hush-hush thing called the Xbox. And I had no, like, idea of how big Xbox was going to be.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And you know, the first meeting was with 4 guys, and they closed the blinds in an inside conference room when they pulled the first one out. And the first one was like 24 by 24, and I'm like, what is that? Is that the new Atari? Like, what's going, like, what, you know? But then all of a sudden, you know, they just go, we're going to put PlayStation out of business. We're going to, like, you know, Sony's going to be hurting. I mean, it's just like, we're like, whoa, what is this stuff? And the people we worked with were people just like myself and my creative staff.
Right,
and,
all passionate, stoked on what you're doing.
Great, and they're really cool guys. Like, we hung out all the time. And then, you know, from, you know, doing Xbox, it turned into Halo, turning into, you know, snowboarding games, into like all their first generated AAA rated games that we worked on. We did all the marketing, TV, everything, and it was fun. It was a really good fun time.
Sort of track back a little bit to when you left college and when started working for a skateboard company. Initially being paid, you said $650, which not a lot of money even back then. And what would what's your sort of outlook on working for maybe not as much money to gain skills versus, you know, some people, I think there's this interesting question, and now I'm graduating this May. I've left school and come back a couple times, and I've finally started to experience that question where people are like, oh, what are you going to do after school? And it's such a weighted question, and I feel like so many people expect you to have an answer, when in the reality, most people are, let's say, 21, 22, 23, you're not going to have your life figured out. But I think because there's so much weight on that question, sometimes a lot of people go get the job that pays a little bit more, or they go do something that maybe they're not as excited about, but it'll feed them. And it's not only for them, but it's sometimes just so they can go tell their parents or their friends or someone, hey, this is what I'm doing. But on the inside, maybe that's not really what they want to do. So what would your thoughts be on essentially picking the two options, working for more money versus working for something where you can gain skills?
I think it works both ways. I think the optimal way is to compromise a little bit, but still do something that you're super passionate about. Figure out how could you get into a company or start a company and pursue it. For less money, who cares? Because in the grand scheme of things, you know, you can get rich working for somebody, but if you want true wealth, you have to work for yourself. So that's the end game. You know, it's not so important where you start, it's kind of where you finish, and the journey in between. So I've seen kids who held out, got super passionate, failed, and then made success and and other kids that started off doing something passionate and it worked out really well. I had other kids that couldn't get into a business that they were super passionate about, taking a sideline job, but then if they were super motivated, change that direction and get into something.
Right.
But if whatever route you take, you just have to be open and skillful and pursuant of finding what you really want to do.
Yeah.
So whatever way you go, if you don't do those things, then it's not going to happen.
Right.
But I've seen both ways work out. Where one of my mentees, he took a not so good job, and then all of a sudden he's working for Pure Vita now down in La Jolla, and he's crushing it.
Yeah.
But in the very beginning, he didn't take the right job. I had another mentee do the same exact thing. He eventually started a digital company, Power Digital, down in San Diego, and they just sold. So it's like, it's if you can figure out, okay, this might not be where I want to be my whole life.
Right.
This might be an interim deal. And I think that you should never chase money, because the more that you don't worry about money, the more you'll make, because it's not such a priority, that you'll just work for the love of it. And if you like what you do, then the money will come.
Yeah, totally.
That's one thing I never worried about was there was some times where I was completely leveraged. I leveraged the house, I leveraged everything to make payroll and what have you, and that's even on the Volcom side too. But you just you have to do it.
Right. So it's not necessarily there's a right way, but if you start taking action, you start doing things, whether no matter what it is, you're going to start to figure out what you like, what you don't like, and as long as you have that end goal where you ultimately want to go, there's not really a right path.
Yeah.
So you don't need to really freak out about it.
Exactly. And the things that are happening today are completely obsolete about what can happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or in a month. You don't know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
You don't know who you're going to be with. And that's something that I just love about life is like, I thought I was extremely privileged doing the things I got to do, growing up in school and then in work. But then, I'm retired and it doesn't stop because I'm open up to meet all these new people and opportunities and everything.
Yeah.
And I find myself with super incredible people doing really fun things. I'm talking about, some of the best athletes in the world that are Hall of Famers, and we're going snowboarding together. And I'm like, damn, this is rad. And I can sit there and have a conversation about their sport and hold my ground because I was passionate about, for some weird reason, I was passionate about hockey. And and all of a sudden, now I'm hanging out with Hall of Famers and going on snowboard and surf trips with them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, holy crap.
Yeah.
It's funny because, we're in Canada going on a snowboard trip and like everyone's like stopping. I'm like, oh, yeah, autograph. And then they look at me and they're like, who are you? And I'm like, they're friends.
Yeah.
I surf with them. And they're like, they surf? I go, yeah, so it's weird. You never know where you're going to end up.
Right.
But if you're open to new things and new ideas and people, and it's just things just kind of doors open.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a crazy deal.
That's a relief, I think, for a lot of people, because I think people feel like you need to make the right next step, but you don't.
Yeah.
So as you're stepping, you'll get somewhere.
Yeah.
Things will work out.
You can be super calculated with everything, but life
Drive yourself crazy.
Yeah, but let life kind of happen.
Yeah.
And don't be stupid.
Right.
And learn from your mistakes and put yourself in the right position.
Yeah.
And that will pay off. But it's just like, you know, if you don't open yourself up, then that door will never open. And the more you open yourself up and put your feelers out and people you meet, and a lot of it is people you know, especially trying to get jobs and you know, it's hard for kids to get good jobs and you know, plus you have to have the drive.
Right.
You know,
Totally.
you can get a job anywhere.
Right.
But
You gotta have someone pushing you.
you gotta push yourself.
On that, what was like your motivation that got you to continue doing stuff?
I look back and my major motivation wasn't to be successful or wasn't to be the best, or it was basically to, since I was a kid, I always wanted to be out of the house, seeing the world and meeting people and just living life. And I remember looking at a map when I was like in 3rd grade, and I looked at like Africa, and I'm like looking at the tip of Africa, South Africa. I'm like, whoa, God, I would love to go there.
Yeah.
I'm 18 years old on the national surf team. We're going to South Africa. I spent a month there. I was so happy I grew an inch. Yeah, that's how crazy it was. I'm like, I'm out of the house. I did not take my first plane flight until I was 18 when like a couple months before that I went to Hawaii to compete. And that was the first time I was on a plane. 18 years old.
Crazy.
And then after that, I'm like,
all the time.
I'm out of here.
Very cool.
Yeah.
One question, kind of a basic question, but I feel like you may have a certain definition. What would you say is your definition of passion?
I think passion is something that that while you are doing it, you are completely fulfilled and happy.
Awesome.
Yeah. And with that, you look at that package and you're like, okay, you know, it's got to be healthy. It's got to be somewhat stress-free.
Right.
You're around fabulous people, mostly fabulous. Not everything's perfect.
Right.
And you just have this sense of purpose. And when you're at a job and you feel like you're not working and you're like laughing because you go, oh my God, I'm getting paid to do this. Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
For life.
Yeah. That, to me, that's passion. And just when you can just sit back and go, wow, this is really cool.
So fulfillment, right? Major thing about life, because you could have all the success in the world, you could have the money. Like we often hear about the people that have all the money in the world, but they're not happy.
Yeah.
And so to touch on fulfillment, would you say that there's ever been a moment where you found yourself unfulfilled, and how would you say you got there, and how would you say you got out of there if you have had that experience?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, there's probably a couple points where I was just working way too much and not putting enough time into the family. And even though I thought I was crushing it by never missing a recital or a baseball game or a hockey game or whatever, I just wasn't there mentally, if not physically.
Right.
There was some demands on traveling and doing photo shoots, whatever, and just being out and about. But I think there were some times where I just missed that part.
Yeah.
But then I look back and I go, if I didn't push and do what I did, then I wouldn't have had what I had later on, where I had a lot of time to do everything.
Yeah, totally.
I retired at 45, so not a lot of time.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, there was right when we picked up Vans as a client, they needed a snowboard lookbook / manual put together, and they gave it to me like 2 weeks before Christmas.
Jesus.
And it was extremely technical.
Yeah.
It was the first time they were launching boots. So, you know, everything had to be shot, had all the explanations, it had to be laid out. And plus it had a, you know, it had to be, it was her first push.
Had to be the best.
And so at my studio, we always gave off a week, you know, from Christmas to New Year's. So I gave everyone that time off. So I sat and designed the whole thing by myself, day and night, and even on Christmas Eve, I worked, And so I look back and I go, that crushed me as a father and like giving up some time. And on the other hand, it was like I proved to Vans, like, look at what I just did. You gave it 2 weeks before Christmas, and it's finished, and you can go to press, and it's gonna be delivered for their first event that was going on. So,
dang.
Yeah, it crushed me mentally and physically. And I remember having that status meeting when everyone came back in after Christmas, and I was literally like, they called me Rain Man after that, because I was just like, I was so done. I was gone. I was gone from the pressures from home, and I was gone from the pressures of work.
Dang.
Yeah, and so I learned a lot about how, you know what, I shouldn't have been the martyr. I should just told a couple guys, hey, you know what, I'll pay you double time.
To help out.
To just come in and help out. But I was like, I had such a thing, like I didn't want to disturb them.
Right.
This is their time. They work their butts off for me. They need that time. But I should have probably been a little more tactful and had a different strategy.
Cool.
Because it crushed me.
So one thing, touching on your kids, what would you say are, like, obviously you've raised them, I'm sure they're doing great. What are some pieces of advice you give them to live life, I guess, on the basic surface? Obviously you live a killer life, so I'm sure you have some pretty killer advice that you give them. So I was curious, what are maybe like 2 or 3 major staple things that you've kind of always told them as they've grown up?
Well, it's funny because I can give advice to 100 kids throughout the year, but trying to give advice to my own kids, do you think they listen? So you just have to send subtle little bombs at them, you know, just subtle things. But I think what my main thing was, don't quit. Don't be a quitter. If you committed, you commit and you finish. Even though you know it's the hardest thing to go through, don't quit. It's a commitment. And then through that, you know, it was like, okay, have your integrity, work hard, chase your passions. That was another one. You know, my kids chase my passions, and they're still figuring out their passions. I think that was, and to be a good person, you know. And I think my kids, their hearts are so big, and they're just wonderful boys. They're just, you know,
that's awesome.
Just going through their life. They make right decisions, and they're just, not always, but they're passionate about what they do, and sometimes that passion steers them in different ways where, you know, they can get in trouble. But I think, be passionate, chase your passion, have integrity, work hard, don't be a quitter, and just be a good person. You know, just the basics. Because you know, I'm not a micro guy. You know, and I never was with them. I was always there for support. You know, support them through whatever. You know, I saw them failing or whatever, and sometimes I could have been a little strong, and then other times I tried to lead by example by doing things with them to
Nice.
teach them silently about how to
Yeah.
become better in sports or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted them to be their own men,
Yeah.
and they're developing into great men.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So before I ask my last question, I'm just curious where, if people want to like get in contact with you, see what you're up to. Obviously, you've done a ton of cool things in your life, and so I'm sure there's many more cool things to come. So if people want to sort of get a hold of you, see what's going on, how can they get in contact with you or something?
I think the best way is I don't have business cards. I vowed once I retired never to have a business card. So you kind of have to work a little bit, because a lot of like students blow smoke, like, oh, I want to meet with you and whatever, and like you as being persistent in making it happen.
A year now? Yeah, finally made it happen.
God bless you. The best way is to message me through Insta or Facebook,
Cool.
and then from there, just see what happens.
Cool.
Or if you're within the SDSU family,
Right.
go to Burn Schroeder, and Burn Schroeder will set it all up.
Totally.
Because Burn's a good filter too.
Yeah.
Because like I said, everyone wants to meet and do, but I hear it so often, but then kids won't follow through.
Right.
So.
And then on those platforms, it's all Thom McElroy, right?
Yeah.
THOMMCELROY.
Yes.
Cool. One actual bonus question I have that just popped in my head as well. So I know you talk a lot about mentorship. You mentor high school students, college students, and you just, a huge part of your life now is giving back to others.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is a good way people can get in contact with mentors in their space?
In their space. I think the best way to do that is if there's whatever marketplace they're in, is there an association? Is there reach out to their bosses or HR and
Right.
find out if there's conferences, and really kind of push for that.
Yeah.
Push for showing them that you want deeper knowledge of the market space, and try to find the money to do that.
Right.
And just do the research, look at articles. There's always some way of getting in touch with somebody
Totally.
somehow, but it takes some work.
Cool.
And I think in getting out there and talking with people face to face is awesome.
Yeah.
If someone's going to speak, make sure you're there, you're listening, asking questions, and trying to meet them afterwards.
Yeah.
So if you need to find somebody, you need to find where they're going to be or how to make an impression with them through other means, through Insta, Facebook, or whatever other social media,
Right, whatever it takes.
whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Whatever your tact is, you got to figure it out and get in and make it happen, and just be a good person.
Yeah.
Show them that, hey,
Yeah. Cool.
we went up.
So my last question, so this show is all about how people find their direction, live a life of passion and fulfillment, and one of the biggest things we're about is having people take action, because similar to how we were talking, you got to take action, you got to start doing something to figure out really what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious, what are maybe one thing people can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding the direction?
Good question. I think for yourself, your inner self and your soul and your heart and kind of is to really examine yourself, sit with yourself and try to figure out okay, who am I and where do I want to go?
Yeah.
And how am I going to get there? I think you need to dig deep and get truthful with yourself and just go, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right things? Am I around the right people? Am I living a healthy lifestyle? And you just have to really look at yourself deeply. And then from there, you just go, okay, this is who I am. And then maybe write down 10 ways of like different strategies on, or just different little bullet points on how do I get to where I want to be, because you've looked at yourself and you know yourself somewhat, but not all the way.
Right.
How can I like further better myself and get happy and healthy and go forward and latch onto my passion and what do I need to do? What are the bullet points to get that done?
Right. So you got to check in with yourself.
Yeah, you need to just and you know, if you're not into meditation, try meditation. You know, you sit with yourself, and that's one thing that I found through meditation is when you sit with yourself, sometimes you really like yourself, and then other times you're like, you don't. You know, I'm like I'm blowing it. I'm like, well, I'm not myself during these things, and I've gone through that process, and when I feel kind of like at sorts, meditate. Just sit with you. It's hard. It sounds funny, but if you sit with yourself in a room and just think about kind of the person you are and the person you want to be,
right?
You know, number one, can you get to being a person you want to be?
Totally.
You got to be honest, and you just go, okay, I made a decision to be this person, and then you gotta execute it. You gotta become that person.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us today, and look forward to being in touch.
Cool.
All right,
Thank
cheers.
you.